Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar, Maximizing the Value Locked in Your Marketing Data. Thank you for joining us today. At this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to William Dunn, the President of Dunn Solutions. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody. My name is William Dunn. I'm the President of Dunn Solutions Group, and I appreciate you joining us for today's webinar. Today, our topic is maximizing the value locked in your marketing data, and we're going to focus on how you can get the most value out of the information you already have, but also some of the challenges that exist with that. And we're going to suggest some technology options that you can use within your own organization to help make that process hopefully easier. So just to get started, a little bit about Dunn Solutions Group. We're an IT consultancy. I'm talking to you from our Skokie office right outside of Chicago. And we have offices in Minneapolis and Raleigh, North Carolina, as well as a development facility in Bangalore, India. Our company provides services in really two major areas. One is application development. We write custom software for our clients on a number of platforms. And the other area, about 60% of our business, is around business intelligence, and that's providing value with information. We help our clients leverage data warehousing, dashboarding, reporting, and a number of other areas that we'll talk about today in the BI space. We also have some packaged solutions as well, and if you want, you can find out more about our offerings on our website, which is www.dunnsolutions.com. So a little bit about ourselves here from a client perspective. We have all sorts of different clients that we support. About 25% of our business comes from not-profit and government clients, and the rest is from a variety of commercial accounts, both small and large. One of the things that I think is common about all of our accounts, besides the fact that they have a lot of blue in their logos, is that they all use data, and data is very critical for them. And so we help them maximize the value of the information that they're collecting, and sometimes we develop the systems that help them collect the data in the first place. So with that, let's move to today's topic. As we know, data is very important, and organizations have begun to understand that. So even at the top levels of management, one of the most important things people are looking at today is data as a strategic asset. So it isn't as much only relegated down to the IT folks or even to the folks in operations. Everybody across the organization is looking at data as a strategic asset. The problem is not everybody is always using data as a strategic asset. Marketing, for instance, runs on data. It's all about data. You're collecting data from your sales organization or your point of sales. You're pulling in customer demographics, product information, grabbing statistics off your website. All that information are things that are available to you to leverage and use in a marketing environment. Part of the challenge is, though, that the volume of data that you're collecting is continuing to explode. So it used to be that you only receive data from a few sources. Now it seems like there's almost an extraordinary amount of places that you can get data, and that's not enough. In order to add more value, you want to add data from even additional sources. So part of the challenges are that these sources are silos of information. They're often, really not all in one system. They're spread across multiple systems. And in fact, sometimes they come from external sources or external systems that you have no control over. So what a lot of people are doing is spending time massaging and cleaning and playing with the data before they are spending any time in doing any analysis on the data. And as we look at most marketing organizations, we see that a lot of time is spent on this sort of important but not strategic part of what they're doing. So they're not maybe using the most professional ways of managing the information. So a big issue is one of trust. You've got this data coming from all these different places. Is it good data? Is it, and how do you make sure that it's correct? So a little story to go along with the image you're seeing on your screen. There's a small country. I'm not going to name the country, but they have a lot of people, but they have actually even more sheep, and they're they're a small country, and they wanted to get a better handle on the crime statistics within their nation. So the police, the national police force there wanted literally a list of every single criminal in the entire country. So they went out and they got data from all sorts of sources, brought it all together, and when they added it all up, there about 5 million names came in there, 5 million criminals within their nation. And all that is fine, except the problem is that there's only 4.5 million people in the entire country, which means the other 500,000 criminals are probably some of their sheep. So at the end of the day, what they realized is that they were getting a lot of issues with their data. It wasn't really qualified, a lot of duplication. They didn't even know that the same person was being counted 2, 3, 4, even 10 times. So that's a really common issue, and some of the products that we're talking about today will help address that issue. Organizations go through a maturity when it comes to data, and a fellow that I know, Wayne Erickson of the Data Warehousing Institute, sort of put together this maturity model for how you treat data. It starts out by saying that really organizations think of data first as a cost center. I need a report. I got to pay somebody to write a report. Then maybe they give that report to maybe some executives. At some level, they move them into a stage where the data is actually used to help people make decisions and finally monitor how folks are doing. And then this is really nirvana. This is where everybody wants to get to, and this is where for marketing you're really trying to get to, is you're trying to get the data to drive the business. In other words, the data isn't just reporting on how the business is doing, it's actually driving the business forward. And finally, if you're really, really sharp in your organization, the data drives the market. In other words, your data helps drive the entire marketplace because you're making changes and adapting and reacting to the market and being proactive, even more looking ahead further than what the market even knows. So how do you get to this spot? Well, one of the things that I believe is that there's a cycle when it comes to data, and that cycle is how you handle the data, the stewardship of your data. And it is something that it's a process. Marketing is a very creative endeavor, but this part of it is really more of an engineering process. And it's very important because you do have the creative parts, and they sort of lie down here at the bottom under discovery. But the different phases you go through is there's data acquisition. You have to clean the data, because if you don't clean the data, you really can't trust it. And finally, you need to get that data consolidated. Then you go through a phase where hopefully what you're doing is allowing people to do the brain work, the discovery around the data. Then you share the data, hopefully, with the organization. And finally, action is taken, and the cycle begins again. So this sort of cycle happens within your organization, whether you're knowing about it or not. What I'm suggesting is that there are more efficient ways to do some of these phases. So moving ahead, let's focus first on this acquisition, cleansing, and consolidation phase, because that's where a lot of people are having trouble, and a lot of people are using spreadsheets and text files and Microsoft Access databases, and really there is a better way to handle that phase of the data stewardship cycle. SAP, one of our partners, and we are a gold partner with SAP, has a product in which they've integrated both the data acquisition as well as the data cleansing features into one product. So that product is called Data Services. And really what that allows you to do is have one development environment that your programmers or even your internal IT can use to get the data into your organization, cleanse it, and then consolidate it so that you can take action on it. And the cleansing and the consolidation is really important. What this tool gives you is an entire framework for doing all those things. So one tool, one framework for doing it, very affordable, coming from a company that's really focused now about 50% on data. So why is this important? Because we really have to answer the question, is the data you have valuable or is it junk? Because if the data you have, your customer data, your point of sale data, your data around your products, even your data around your demographics and geography, if it's not correct, it's going to be very difficult for you as a marketer to try to do the things you need to do to increase sales, to communicate with your customers, even to know where to advertise. So that data being clean is very important. So typically some of the things that go wrong are you've got missing data. The data you have is invalid. When I say invalid, you may have part numbers that no longer exist or maybe have been changed. You've got a number of different people in your data set that look like different people but are actually the same person. You're not sure who's part of a household or not. You've got data that's just missing. So all these things are common issues that people deal with, and the way that they do them, when they don't really have a choice, is they're dealing with them manually with spreadsheets, and they're kind of cutting and pasting and trying to get their data set, in the right order. But I think there is a better way to do it. With data services, it automatically allows you to cleanse your customer data. And what does that mean, cleansing your customer data? If you look here at this example, we have a customer record. And this is the way you might get a record in from any number of systems, from your website, from your ERP system, even from your customer relationship management, your CRM system. But the problem is that this is not a very clean record, and it's going to be very difficult in the future to do anything with this information because you won't be able to tell whether you've got other records that are like that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So the first thing you have to do is you have to normalize this thing. You have to take this input record and turn it into a standard format. Take the cities, take the names of the organizations, the companies, even take the email addresses and get them all in the same case, the same format, break out the prefix, postfix, and have a nice clean record. Before you do that, you really can't do anything. But let's say you've done that and you've used the software to get you to this point. The next stage really is consolidation for a lot of things. So, for example, here, Margaret Smith, she's been working with this organization, and her name appears 3 times in 3 different systems, but it's all the same person. Here, she's using her nickname Peg. Here, she's using Maggie. Here, Margaret. But it's really all the same person. So it's very important that from a marketing perspective, we know what Margaret Smith client has purchased, even though she's purchased it under different personas. So what this software allows you to do is it allows you to readily identify that these 3 records, these 3 customers are really all the same customer. And why don't we get all that data into one customer record? So now we understand everything that this customer has purchased, and we have a holistic view of that customer. So data acquisition, data cleansing, data consolidation is really key. And what you need is a tool or technology that can let you get data from almost anywhere. And instead of buying lots of different products and tools to get your data, you need a tool that allows you to have, sort of access to everything. And this data services allows you to pull data from almost any common data source that you have within your organization. So I'll put it to you that one of the most important things about the first part of data acquisition, consolidation, cleansing is to do it in a more regimented engineering type fashion, use a technology to let you do the work, and make this not the biggest part of your day. In fact, I want to talk about the second phase now. After you've done these phases, you go into a mode which is more interesting, and I think which where more people want to spend their time, that's the discovery phase. This is where you understand a little bit more about the data now that you've got a nice clean data set, and you interact with it to try to find out things about your organization. So I look at discovery really in 2 different ways. There's a high-level exploration. It's often done by a business user looking for information quickly, trying to understand where things are, maybe coming up with a hypothesis about how we can better market to somebody or better run the business. And then there's a more detailed modeling kind of a phase where you have a small set of very math-oriented statistical people that are going to do some really amazing magical things with the data, but they're not going to, they're maybe a smaller group using very specialized tools. And SAP really has 2 different products that meet both of those needs. So the first one I want to talk about is the sort of the high-level Explorer product. And if you hang on a minute, I'm also going to show you a demo of this because I think you'll find it interesting. This is SAP Business Objects Explorer. And the nice thing about Explorer is that it's a product that you can use without a whole lot of training. There isn't a lot of training you need for it. It's almost intuitive. And it can be used by anyone in the business. So once you've got your data set clean, you can expose that data just using it through the web, through a web browser, to anybody that wants to play with it. And then when they play with it, they can then share their results with others in the organization. So what you're really doing is you're saying you're going to let other people look at the data and try to come to some conclusions and help drive what you're going to do within the organization. So I'm going to give you a quick look at the Explorer product right now. I'm jumping into my web browser, and I'm logging into Explorer. I need to use my password and login ID here. I'm going to log on. So the first thing you see when you come into Explorer is you're going to see an interface that looks, sort of Google-like. You've got a search box at the front here, and then you have what we call our information spaces. And I've only got 2 here, but you could have lots and lots of information spaces. You can also, very interestingly enough, if you have just a spreadsheet of data that you wanted to play with, you can just upload and explore a spreadsheet of data on the fly as well. But let me show you how you would use it with more enterprise-like data. So let's say I'm interested in finding out about a certain type of product that we're selling. We're selling shirts, and I'm also looking for revenue associated with shirts. So I can just do a search, and what the product will do is go out into these information spaces and show me the information space that's most likely to meet the question that I'm asking. So I'm looking for shirts and revenue, and I see that this information space has some of those attributes. We've got a revenue piece of information here. We've got some categories with different kinds of shirts, and I'm getting a very high score here. So I think this might be the place I would want to look at. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this link, and this will take me straight into this information space. And you notice that I've got all this stuff came up, and I haven't written any SQL or doing anything with, any database stuff. It's kind of all magical. And over here to the left, I've got the measures, which are the things I'm going to be, numbers basically. I've got revenue, quantity sold, margin, and then here the software is trying to pick the things that it thinks I will be most interested in. And of course, it puts shirts here as the category first. So I'm going to pick shirts, as my category. And I'm interested in knowing how they performed in these 2 years. So I'll choose those 2 years. And then I'm really interested here. I've got my cities. I'm really interested in looking at it by city, and I'll pick all the top cities here because I'm interested in looking at the top cities. So down at the bottom, as I've made these choices, you see that I've got over here the choices I've made, and then it automatically has created a graph for me. And I'm not interested in looking at it by quarter. It thinks I want it by quarter. I really want to look at it by city. So now I've got my revenue displayed by city across the bottom, and I can take a look at that in a lot of different ways. If I want to, I can maybe look at it as a pie chart. And over here, you'll notice that this automatically came up with the different values in there. I can look at it potentially as a trending chart because I've got a trending chart by city. I can do some comparisons here, maybe a spider chart, which a lot of people love, a spider chart. So you can see, by the way, that a lot of stuff is going on here in New York. That's got the highest sales, very clear from the spider chart. If, for instance, I'm only interested maybe in my top 3 cities, I can just pick it down, and now I've changed my spider chart to my top 3 cities, and it's automatically consolidated my other cities into something called Other. So what this software lets you do is very, very quickly play with your data, look at it. Let's say I also am interested in one other thing here. I would like to look at my margin. I can add margin right here. And so now I've got 2 sorts of things here. I've got my margin, and it seems to be very closely aligned, by the way, with my revenue, which makes sense, right? So I can quickly play with my data and sort of discover things and trends that might lead me to then make decisions or choices. Then if I want to, I can share that with other folks. I can send an email off, and that email has a link to this whole site, and somebody else can click through, and they will be right here. They will end up right where I am at this moment. The other thing I can do is I can always export this information. I can export it as a picture or as an Excel sheet or as a CSV file or even a web intelligence report, which I'll show you that in a few minutes later, but down the line. So it's not just me exploring by myself. but it's me being able to share the information with other people in my organization. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this down and go back to my presentation here. Okay, one second. And talk about the next level of discovery. And this is really where we see, everybody going. This is sort of the nirvana of data analysis. It's predictive analytics. Predictive analytics is more than just reporting and kind of looking backwards in the rear view mirror. It's sort of, I like to think of it, reporting is the rear view mirror in your car. Predictive analytics is the GPS in your car. Predictive analytics doesn't tell you where you've been. It tells you where you should go by using information that you're collecting about the past, about the present, to build models to take you towards the future. And that predictive analytics is really the optimal thing you're trying to shoot for with your data. That's the highest maximum use of your data set. So predictive analytics gives you the best value out of all the money you've spent collecting your data. It lets you have a fact-based decision-making process. Another time, a lot of people make decisions based on their gut feel or what happened last year. Or predictive analytics is all about math. You've got to back it up. Predictive analytics lets you identify future opportunities. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a slide or two. Areas where you may not even know that you had an opportunity, you'll find out with predictive analytics. Very difficult to figure it out with reporting. So let's talk a little bit about the two different main features of predictive analytics. One is called knowledge discovery. So knowledge discovery is what you do when you're trying to understand your data at one more level deeper. A lot of times you get a report and it's got lots and lots of information on it. And you're trying to correlate, even that Explorer example I just showed you. I'm looking at a city and I'm looking at a category, and I sort of in my head can figure out that New York, it's pretty obvious, has the most amount of shirts. But if I wanted to take it a little step further and understand what are some of the drivers, why does New York have the highest volume of shirts? And, the human brain can only accommodate maybe 3 or 4 variables at the same time. Predictive analytics, data mining, it lets you look at 100 variables, 150 variables at a time, and helps you understand the correlations between those variables. I mean, there is no way that you could possibly do that in your head. And so predictive analytics and knowledge discovery lets you discover trends and relationships that you just didn't know existed at all. The next one is the predictive analysis. Once you've got your trends discovered, once you've got an understanding of the formula of that why things are related in a certain way, you can really take it to the next step, which is building a model around your business. And with that model, you can predict what's going to happen in the future. So you can predict which customers are most likely to respond to which type of campaign, which customers are most likely to be able to swallow a price increase. Let me give you a real-life example of a company right now that we're mostly all familiar with, Netflix. Netflix is probably the king of predictive analysis. Netflix, if you know, is a movie renting service, and one of their things that they do primarily is when you come to their website, they give you suggestions as to what movies they think you'd be interested in. Well, they do that because they want you to continue to use their service, because they know that people who continue to use their service continue to pay the subscription fee. One of the things Netflix did just recently has been in the news. They've raised their prices enormously. And there's been a big hue and cry. People say they're going to drop Netflix. But I will tell you that, in my opinion, a company that understands so much about predictive analytics understands exactly what it's doing. And I bet you that behind those 4 walls of their offices, they've built a predictive model, and they can guess almost exactly how much revenue they're going to lose from people dropping their service versus how much additional revenue they're going to get from changing their pricing model. And I don't think you need to be too smart to realize that Netflix knows what they're doing. And I'm guessing they're going to make a heck of a lot more profit next year than they did this year, although a little bit of bad press in the way. So we'll see how it goes. Predictive analytics are not perfect, but this is a company that does use math before it does a lot of things. So very interesting. We'll see what happens with them. The product that lets you do this manipulation really easily is Predictive Workbench. Predictive Workbench, again, is a product that I would say is used by a smaller number of people within your organization, but it lets you graphically create these predictive models. A lot of statistical models in here, a lot of correlations, graphs. It would take about at least an hour to do a real good demo of Predictive Workbench. But again, SAP provides this product because it's a key part of that data stewardship. Once you've got the data, once you've explored it, you have to go to the next level. The nice thing is the output of Predictive Workbench is a model which you can then use to enrich your data set. So I'll give you an example. We did a project recently for a company that was an email marketing company. So this company made money when people clicked through on the emails that they were sending out. So they had a bunch of their customers. Really, they have two customers. One are the vendors trying to sell a product, usually a consumer product, and then their other customer was any one of their 1.7 million members who received their emails. And their business model is when a member clicked through on an email, they would get a fee for that click-through. Now, the interesting thing is that different offers had different values to them. So sometimes if you click on something, they'd get 10 cents. For other products, you'd get 50 cents. And the other issue that they had was that really they only wanted to send one email a day. Because if you start getting too many emails, people opt out of their email list. So every day they had a choice of 20 to 50 different offers they could potentially send to a customer. Which offer should they send to which customer to get the highest return? And they hired us to try to figure that out. So we used a combination of historical data, demographics, understanding categorization of the products at the different levels, ran it through a predictive model, and we also did some things that they didn't think about. We took a look at the frequency of the email because it's counterintuitive, but we found out that some people respond better when they don't get an email every day, when they get an email every other day. Other people respond better when they get an email every day. So at the end of all of this, what we did is build a model which allowed them on a daily basis to score every single offer they had against every single email address that they had in their database, and then allow them to send the best value offer to the correct email address to try to get the most revenue that day. And results were an uptick in about 10% in terms of the click-through of the net revenue to the organization. So there's a very high ROI in doing predictive analytics type work. And we leveraged a number of these technologies to do that. So now that you've sort of got your discovery down, you've built your models, you understand a little bit more about your business, the next thing that's important is you can't keep it a secret. You've got to share that information and share that information with the organization in a number of different ways. And so we're in the part of the cycle which is all about sharing and taking action and releasing that information to the folks in the organization that can use it to impact their business. And when we look at sharing, we have a couple different ways of doing that at least. Two of the ones that I want to talk to is web intelligence, which is web-based reporting and information sharing platform, and then dashboards, Dashboard Designer, which is a way of creating very quick, easy-to-use dashboards that people can use to run their organization. The biggest and most important thing is you want to make the data actionable, which means that you need to distribute that data not just to the top of your organization, not just to the VP, C-level, but down to the middle layer, to those managers on the ground. And quite frankly, I believe that all that data should be distributed to the people in the field. We recently completed a project for a large company that does publishing, and the data that we created, the dashboards that we created, were used by the VP of sales, the sales managers, down to the field sales rep to help them drive their business, help them understand what's going on and where they should be spending their time and how they are performing. So that information was not just kept at the high level, it was used throughout the entire organization. I want to take a look at a couple of these products, really quickly. The first one is really web intelligence. It's an ad hoc reporting tool that allows you to build reports and then share those reports easily with the folks within your organization. And what's nice about all of these products is this one in particular is web-based as well. So it allows you to just build a report on the fly and then have that report shared. I'm going to go ahead and bring that product up and show you very quickly how it works. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and log in through a web browser and go to my home page. And I've decided on my home page that I want to have sort of a mini dashboard set up. So when I come to this home page, it tells me a little bit about what's going on, things that I'm interested in. But today, I'm interested in building a new report. So I'm going to go through my document list, and it's going to show me potentially all the reports that I already have access to. I have a little favorites bucket, and I've got a couple of reports here and dashboards, but I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to create a new web intelligence report. Now, the first thing I have to do is pick a data set, and I'm going to go ahead and pick one of the data sets that already exists in my system. But you can create multiple data sets. I had a whole bunch of them. A lot of times people will only have one or two, and you can control access as to who gets to see what, so that only the appropriate people are seeing the appropriate data set. So it's going to fire up the query panel, what it's called, and it's going to allow me to choose information that I want to use to then build my report. And the nice thing about this is I don't really need to know a lot about SQL or how the data is stored. As long as my IT guys have done a good job of creating the data set under the covers, I can just drag and drop and find the things I want. So on the left, you'll see here, these are objects, which are business objects. We've got time, a store, product information, and I'm interested in looking at sales from last year. I can drag that down here. And I'm interested maybe in the state where the sale occurred. Potentially out of the product, I'd be interested in the product category. And then in terms of a measure, something I think I want to know about sales revenue. And I'm going to do some very simplistic kind of report right now, but I think that once you see it, you can then sort of understand the kind of the power this tool has. So now that I've chosen the things I'm interested in, by the way, I haven't written any SQL. I don't know anything about databases. I can just go ahead and run that query. And what I'll get back is sort of a template for a report. It's a very, generic template. I've got my states. I've got my values. Perhaps one of the things I want to do is I want to make the states into a section. So I'm going to go ahead and create a section here. So I've now sectioned it out by state. I also want to maybe copy this, and I'll tell you why. I'll paste it right here, right next to each other. Oops, I don't want to do that. I want to do the section. I want to do the whole thing. So 1 second here. Let me just copy my table. That's what I really want to copy. Let me paste that here. 1 second. Now I've got a copy of the table here, and I just don't want to leave it as a table. I'm interested maybe in turning it into some sort of chart. I'm going to take it and make it a maybe a vertical group chart. So I'll have my data in both a chart view as well as a number view, and I can widen this out a little bit. So with very short order, I've created a little report here where I've got 5 states. So here's California, Colorado, DC, and I've got a chart. And I've done this really with no programming at all. Don't know much about the database other than I've got this information here. But now that I've got my report, I can go ahead and I can save it, and I'll save it out back to the platform, give it a name. I'll put it in my favorites here, and I will call it my marketing webinar report. And I'll stick it out there in the network. And then if I go back to my document list, you'll see, hopefully, that my report is out there. And there it is, my marketing webinar report. And not only can I run this on demand just by clicking on it, and I hope you'll trust me that I can do that, but what I can also do is I can schedule this report. And so I can have it run, let's say, every day. I can send it to a whole bunch of different, I'm going to send it to an Acrobat file. I can send it to some email recipients. I can figure out, who I want to send it to. I might send it to myself, from Bill at DoneSolutions.com, to Bill at DoneSolutions.com. And by the way, I picked it as a PDF, so the people that get my report, they don't even need to have this product. They can just read it. And I can very easily get this thing done every day just by hitting the schedule button. So I've have a platform which allows me now that I've got my data, now I want to share it, I can go ahead and share that data. See, I've scheduled it. It's running right now. I think I might get an email with it when it's finished. Let's just take a quick look and see if it's done. Oh, it failed for some reason. Maybe I did something wrong here, but I think you get the point. That the report can be scheduled and run automatically. Let's go back to my home page, and I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation. But I wanted to just show that, that's one way that you can go ahead and share information is through writing these kinds of reports. And if you have the right platform, writing these reports are pretty easy. The other way to share information is more of a, kind of a top-level view is dashboards. And I think you've heard a lot about dashboards. And dashboards can be used in a lot of different ways, but mostly it's about quickly sharing information. And so there's a product called Dashboard Designer that comes from SAP that allows you to share information very quickly. And I've got a couple different dashboards. This is a dashboard that we built that explains how different loyalty drivers can maybe impact revenue. And what's interesting is this is actually the final results or the output of a predictive analytics job we did where we were figuring out which loyalty drivers were best for this organization and what their costs were. And you can see that if you raise how much you're spending on different types of drivers, your revenue goes up. You can see what the difference of making changes within the store is projected to do to revenue, incremental revenue. And you can figure out what is the most beneficial change. And we've got loyalty really on 3 different metrics: retention, cognitive, and effective. And again, that's a whole other presentation. But what I really want to show you is the fact that you can display this information in a dashboard, and then the dashboard itself can be interactive. So I can make changes on the fly to the dashboard and have those changes reflected immediately. It's a great way to share information with other people within your organization. Here is an example of a dashboard that was done by us for a marketing group within a bank. And basically, this dashboard, let me pick a date that has some values in it. This dashboard was used by marketing to communicate to upper management how they were doing. So we had all the campaigns they were running, their sponsorship, their events, and then at the top we had a whole series of metrics that they wanted us to be able to visualize: Net Promoter Score, brand awareness, market share, and we were able to keep this updated automatically. So as they ran their events, their data was plugged into an underlying data repository, and then upper management would get these dashboards to see how they were doing on retention, net new accounts, growing their relationships in a very easy to traverse method. So the nice thing about this is when people were saying, where's all our marketing money going and what are the results of our marketing efforts, we were able to communicate to upper management how things were going, especially on the metrics that we were most interested in. So this is really was only used for internal communications, but it was very important because they had multi-million-dollar marketing activities and people wanted to see the result. And it was very difficult sometimes for marketing managers to explain how things were going and what were the metrics around it, because it was looking at a lot of spreadsheets really wasn't doing it for people. So they wanted to be able to communicate with the dashboard. So this is actually a real dashboard. So at the end of this, I just wanted to come back to the whole point of this discussion today is that I think data is important. You're probably doing a lot of things with data right now. But my question to you is, are you using data in the most effective manner? How much of your time is being spent massaging, cleaning, emailing spreadsheets, doing things that are not of the highest productive value? And how much time could you be spending doing things that are much more interesting and much more valuable if you had the right tools? And the nice thing is that depending on the size of the organization, these tools are available at reasonable prices now because they're available for smaller organizations, mid-sized organizations, as well as the enterprise companies that typically use these types of products. So that's the end of my presentation today. I wanted to just open this up. My email address is on the screen, as well as my phone number. And if anybody has any questions, you can type them into the question box there, and Lori will go ahead and ask me the questions, and I'll try to do my best to answer them in the next few minutes.
Great. Yeah, just a reminder once again that the question box is on the lower right-hand portion of your screen. We did have one question, but Bill, you you answered it right at the end of your presentation. That was regarding if these solutions are suited for large companies only or also for smaller companies.
Yeah, they're really available now, or I want to say for the first time, but really in package form for mid-sized and smaller companies at a reasonable price point, and that's because SAP has acknowledged that smaller companies operate on a different budget, a different scale, but they still need some of the same power of these tools that larger companies need.
Great, and I think that's it. We haven't had any additional questions during this time.
Okay, well, I appreciate everybody's time this afternoon, and feel free to follow up with myself if you have anything further that you'd like to know about today's topic. Thanks again.